what are the solution? If you were to post on LinkedIn today, I have these data sets, I need an ELP done, can someone tell me how long it's going to take? Do you reckon anyone's going to say, give me 30 minutes?
Welcome to the first series of the Off Menu IT podcast. I am your host, Sean Ashbury, and in this episode we are focused on Licenseware's ITAM solution, which is one of 9 episodes that you can enjoy this season. This episode was recorded on the 23rd of October, and some of the proposed announcements may have already been released. This podcast is fully independent and does not accept payments from guests. The mission is to help the ITAM community make better decisions through their own discovery. Let this maximize your IT budgets and improve your RFP process. In this episode, we have Chris Allen, who is one of the founders and CRO of Licenceware.
So today here we have Chris Allen, who is the co-founder and chief revenue officer at Licenceware. I first noticed Chris several years ago when he was releasing lots of authentic and original content, lots of GIFs related to Microsoft licensing, which kind of truly made him a Microsoft SME in my eyes, and many others, I'm sure. He spent several years focused on Microsoft at major resellers before taking on the position at Licenceware, helping them to grow as a business by getting Licenceware's name out there, whilst also helping to develop the Microsoft. On top of that, he's also a recent dad of one, a young puppy. So, yeah. A good introduction for you there, Chris.
Yeah, good introduction. Yeah, don't think we could father a child just at the moment. They're fathering a startup and a puppy's more than sufficient. And I like that you bring up the history of how I sort of came around on LinkedIn. It haunts me to this day, but the attitude was always to be better known for the wrong reasons than not known at all, Sean. But thanks for having me on.
No problem. I personally enjoyed them, and I know looking at the interactions, a lot of people probably enjoyed that as well. I can't say it was for the wrong reasons.
I was going to say, from a business development perspective, that was the main purpose of it. There's a lot of noise out there on LinkedIn, and I think it's good to differentiate yourself, not from you need to have a persona out there to differentiate yourself. And I think doing that in a funny and tactful way is very important. We've had to shift away from that now because it's not just about myself. It's about obviously our corporate brands and the people we sell to, and they expect some level of formality when it comes to our industry, definitely.
No, for sure. I can still see a little bit of it coming through, though. So obviously that character and individuality, I'd say is definitely part of the Licenceware brand as a whole anyway. So yeah, I'm sure the listeners will definitely know what I mean by that. So who are Licenceware, and what is your product?
So Licenceware, we're a SaaS based startup focusing in IT asset management. We come from consulting backgrounds, so we've spent a lot of time in spreadsheets, crunching data over and over again in a number of capacities. That's audit defense and providing compliance positions to customers or working actually internally at firms. And we realized we were doing a lot of the same tasks, often from using data from not only just SAM tools, but non-SAM tools as well, applying licensing rules. And rules are rules, right? Rules can be coded. So we developed a platform that would effectively automate that process. So taking data from any data source, applying complex licensing logic on top to provide, insights much faster than doing it in traditional methods.
Understood. So I guess that is where your idea of the product came from, was inspired by all of your own experiences, and also speaking to your colleagues who probably, some of them love data. You have those people, but some people absolutely hate having to go through the number crunching.
I think our own experiences were, my background was Microsoft, like you mentioned. Chipran, our CTO and original founder's background was Oracle. Alex, he had stints at some of the big four doing myriad of vendors, but he's specialized in Red Hat. And we love Excel, we love data, but there's probably a chunk of it which is boring, which is getting it in the right format, applying the really basic rules and calculating multiple scenarios. The interesting bit is actually speaking with the customer, understanding what their strategy is, providing insights and actually more value in those engagements, whereas just applying the same standard rules in every assessment. Yeah, that's the bit we wanted to get rid of.
Sure. Freeing all that time up. Interesting how you mentioned obviously the free. When you're looking at the app store on the licenseware ecosystem, you see Oracle, Microsoft, and Red Hat. So clearly, based on your own experiences, that kind of helps grow the product.
Yeah, I mean, most of the engagements we saw when we were at the services firms were for tier one vendors. It works with the Pareto principle, right? That 80% of your cost and risk will sit with 20% of the vendor coverage. It's most of where your spend are. It's where your most audit risk comes from. So it's the most consistent sort of work that you need to be doing for your vendors. Not to say that you don't need to manage your tier 2 or tier 3 spend, but definitely when we wanted to go to market, we didn't want to build something generic. We wanted to build something specific, which really helped people tackle those big problem vendors.
Brilliant. So when was the moment or specific moment or moments, or maybe that first breakthrough success, when you realized you had a unique or valuable offering in the market?
It was before I joined, but it was one of the reasons I joined. When the MVP was created, it was specifically for analyzing Oracle LMS script output. So if you're ever audited by Oracle, they'll make you run these scripts, or maybe you've been audited before and you have them. The output is not very nice. It's effectively a zip file with multiple files within files, text files, unstructured data. Yeah, really, really not nice to deal with. And obviously it's meant to be complex for a reason, so it's not easy for you to understand. But what we had developed was a solution that would parse that data, structure it, and apply licensing requirements analysis on top. And it was initially showed around in some closed circles of former colleagues of Cyprian and Alex, and the response was like, we really like this, can we buy it? And the intention wasn't actually to sell it to them, it was to get some feedback. And that first customer was Accenture, who said, yes, we want to use this product. That was the, first sort of reassurance that what we had built was probably more than a hobby project. Large scale organizations were wanting this sort of technology, and that was just for Oracle database from one data source. So the vision kind of, that was a stepping stone for us going in the right direction. The vision's expanded quite a lot, but yeah, the sort of market reaction was pretty quick.
Certainly, I mean, validation from the top 5, one of the top 5 companies in the world, certainly would inspire someone to go forward with their plans. But that's brilliant, absolutely amazing. And obviously since then, how has the firm grown in terms of client size, client base, and I guess reputation that licenseware has seen?
Yeah, it's been an interesting story. I'll start with reputation. So normally with startups, generally you have early adopters, then you've got the late majority. And I think establishing a reputation in the industry has been not necessarily a challenge, but probably something that's taken longer than we would have thought it would have taken. I mean, we work in the industry of compliance and accuracy, and going through the onboarding process of some of these larger firms and the scrutiny that our analysis would go under was quite a painful process. As we've come out at the other end of that, however, we've got a really strong, trustworthy product with some great reference material, but getting, recommendations, getting reviews, getting things like security certifications, that doesn't happen instantly. I mean, alongside that, in terms of our customer growth and the regions we've been working with, we started in Europe. Most of our customer client base is now in the States. So we've grown really rapidly over in the US. So love working over there. I would say a smaller footprint within Europe, and then quite a large footprint within APAC as well. I think the reasons for that, Europe's quite a mature market. I would say the US is large. They have a lot of money. They like to move faster as well. So that's probably why we've succeeded quite well over there. And they've got quite a large startup and entrepreneurship culture, shall we say. And in APAC, I wouldn't say they're less mature because there's a lot of SAM firms based out of there. But in terms of how we can enable scale has really resonated in those markets.
what's the kind of the core product service that you've sold into the US and been successful, I guess, across Europe, APAC? I mean, has it always been the ecosystem as a whole, or has it been mainly focused on one or two things? Because I understand the app does provide a kind of subscription based where you can pick and choose what is needed.
So our hero product's Oracle. In terms of our history, we started with Oracle, as I mentioned, Oracle database, moved on to middleware, then Microsoft, and then to Oracle, back to Oracle with Oracle Java after Oracle changed the licensing metrics, then Red Hat and Adobe. So Oracle has the largest footprint. I don't think people buy into the idea of licenseware for specific modules. It's more of depends on the demographic you're looking at as well. Our initial go-to-market was focused on managed service providers. This was our background. We had large networks within them. They were processing probably the largest amount of data. Their customers would all have different tools. So the value proposition of having a platform that could utilize any data really resonated with them. So it was less about the specific products, more about the fact that we can ingest large data sources and reconcile them. And the fact that we have, a wider product reach allows them to, dabble in different vendor projects as they want to. And for the end users, that's a different kettle of fish.
Mm-hmm.
For the larger scale organizations, Oracle and, the database side products resonate really well. So SQL and Oracle database work really well, along with the Red Hat Enterprise Linux and middleware. As you start to get to smaller to mid-sized organizations who are less reliant on maybe these legacy stacks like Oracle database, Microsoft's really where it hits home. Adobe is an example. Those more wider spread organized, wider with those guys.
Fair enough. And obviously you mentioned in the previous answer that sort of feedback has effectively shaped the product and helped you to develop the product to become a high level offering. In as far as Accenture, obviously, if you mentioned there, MSP is one of the major kind of focuses of the business. That customer feedback must have really accelerated and helped you shape for that scalability on tenfold, because again, I'd imagine they were managing some pretty large estates themselves.
Yeah. So there's two parts of that. There's scalability in terms of data size. And you'd be surprised, actually, some smaller firms work with some of the largest clients. And, some large firms work with large clients as well, right? But they're the what we see, what I would say with the larger firms is more consistent data coming through. Some of the largest data sets we've seen have been in the region of around 350,000 devices. And that's when we started to run into issues. Oracle database, the counts don't get too high. Maybe you'll get to 2,000, maybe 3,000 on the top end. Microsoft, however, because every single device will have Excel on it or PowerPoint on it, and you're not just analyzing, say, Windows Server or SQL Server, you're analyzing everything. If you think there's 350,000 devices and then there's multiple rows per device for each individual software install, that's when we started to run into some scalability issues, which we needed to develop actually on the back end and the front end to handle, and obviously beef up the environment to be able to pass that. In terms of the MSP's requirements, in terms of functionality, yeah, I mean, they've been really, really helpful. Licensing can be quite a gray area, and we have a lot of opinions on the way things should be done. And we always say internally that, you could give the same piece of work to 5 consultants and they would likely all come back with different interpretations of the results. So being able to collate all of that feedback and create, let's say, data structures which please everybody has been challenging, but very rewarding, because then when people come to the platform, they'll say, no, I believe it's interpreted this way. And we're like, yeah, well, look, this table has been focused on that sort of analysis. So I thought I phrased then that sort of analysis to aid them. But yeah, that's been, because everyone has different opinions, it does make it quite challenging to make sure that we don't build something that someone else disagrees with or annoys most of our customer base for this one customer. So balancing that's also interesting just from a product perspective.
Brilliant. And I guess that has, you mentioned that has worked, and you have taken a lot of unique feedbacks from, say, and then from the enterprise, also from the MSP consultants, and have now created, because obviously it's still evolving, but creating a product that is now well received, and that's brilliant. That's great. So I know you mentioned you have a lot of partnerships during our intro call. So how have you formed these strategic partnerships? And I guess you mentioned there it does help to improve your ecosystem. But I guess, are you allowed to name names as to who you are currently partnered with, and I guess how it helped?
Yeah, I mean, the logos are on our website. So, I mean, my background, right, I'm ex Software One and Comparex. A lot of those guys, it's an incestuous industry. Everybody knows everyone. So if you worked at Software One, you'll know people at Crown, you'll know people at Insight, you'll know people at all of these different sort of MSPs or resellers or VARs, and typically organizations who are selling software end up stumbling onto opportunities in managing software. So actually getting out into those discussions was relatively easy. The bit that I think we didn't foresee was somewhat of a reluctance for some firms who've built internal automations already. No matter how ugly a baby is, it's still their baby. So that's actually makes the sales cycle a bit of a challenge, right? I
like that.
Some organization, it sums it up perfectly, right? But they've invested money, they've invested time, and they've developed something, and they have a process, and they understand the value that we bring, but actually displacing that process is quite challenging. So I think that's the hurdle that we faced in some of those organizations. If they've not got that, then it's very easy to help them understand. If you were to deliver this to your customers, you can start delivering projects faster. You can deliver projects more consistently. The customer can have access to a portal. It's understood super, super fast. Then you ever have partners who don't actually dabble in those services, and they have customers who have needs, and the customers will just procure that directly from the partner. But, from our perspective, we're a software development company. We do not want to deliver services. We want to focus on the development of our software, and our partners to understand how our technology can help them deliver service to their customers, or the customers consume it and they interact with them to give them that service wrap, to ensure that they're getting the full value. Licensing is not simple, and there always needs to be some level of specialism applied on top of tooling. And we've seen that across all of the tools, right? There's massive service industries around the market leaders, and we don't negate that. We can't automate everything. We'll automate as much as possible. But yeah, you will always need a service partner, or if the customers got significant investment in their ITAM practice, they will have someone who can handle that internally.
You've mentioned before, you're not here to replace, you're here to assist. And certainly right from the start, your tool is able to take a massive data set and provide answers quickly. Whereas all of your experience was it took a long time to do that. And just going back to the ugly baby comment. So I know from experience in recruiting for many of these service providers that do have internal tools that they've created, and I know that they started it before the AI machine learning, obviously, generation kind of came in. And you look at licenseware's tool, not to get too technical, but it has been built in this modern era using, I guess, machine learning and underpinned by generative AI. Is that correct?
So we use it in certain products, and we want to use AI responsibly, because you can't. We're in the industry of compliance, right? And inaccuracy can cost thousands, if not hundreds, if not millions of dollars, right? So we need to be very careful about where we apply the use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, or large language models within our technology. So it's appropriate for some where we've used it to generate, say, things like matching models, certain calculations, etc., or to at least model out what the structure could look like at the beginning. So actually speeding up the development cycle that we would normally take manually, eating our own dog food, right? If we can automate some internal processes to write code and to come up with parts of the product, we will do so. However, Neo is a really good example. So we built this Gen AI chatbot, which will answer licensing questions. I mean, ChatGPT will do that, right? These different models will do that you have access to. The problem with them is you don't know how correct they are because they're scanning the entire internet. So the purpose of Neo was to restrict the resource that it has access to be only vendor documentation. And then when it gives an answer, to link the vendor documentation. So it's a case of like, this is the most probable answer because that's what large language models do, is they'll find the most probable answer to a particular question and then give you access to the reference material. We're not going to say this is the definitive answer because that's extremely dangerous. And I think that's something that organizations, regardless of industry, are trying to figure out about how they adopt AI in a responsible manner. But yeah, we use it in places, but we will never allow a compliance decision to be dictated by a rogue AI effectively. That's not within our ethos. It will always be a feature. It will never be a core part of our product. Well, yeah, I should reword that. It's not necessarily not a core part of our product, but we will not. No, it won't be in the sense of that it can cause our analysis to be dictated by it, shall we say?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess, is that Neo service unique in the market compared to other competitors, or do others provide a similar, to your knowledge, a similar kind of additional service on top of the tool?
I know that the other players are building out these AI chatbots. I don't know whether it's modeled to answer licensing questions based on reference materials. I'm not too sure, in all honesty, Sean, but I expect moving forward, the industry, all of the tools are going to jump on the bandwagon. I mean, every tool that I use in my day-to-day job has one of these AI tools where I can ask it questions and it will give me answers. So that's probably where it's all going. I think one of the impacts we'll see will probably be more from how people within IT asset management need to conduct their jobs, or data analysts need to conduct their jobs, because what traditionally you would have to go to a developer and ask them to write a program or a script that would do X, Y, and Z, anybody can do, which changes the dynamic quite a bit. I think we'll see more solutions coming out from individuals. So someone at a company will develop a script which will do X, Y, and Z, which helps them solve a problem within their organization pertaining to a particular data source or software vendor. And they'll probably post it on LinkedIn and share that out. Maybe they'll try and commercialize it. I don't know. But I think we'll see definitely a lot more contribution from the market, which is really exciting.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, to anyone listening, if they are that person, quick shout out for the ITAM takeaways is that if you do have anything to share like that, you're willing to, happy to share that with the open market for sure. And so, Chris, what does your solution do well? What do you license? Where does licenseware excel compared to its competitors then?
So we work with any data, firstly. And so it's a data agnostic platform. We are not reliant on any particular discovery. I will caveat that. Certain discovery solutions will discover certain data points which you need for certain vendors. But the intention holistically is to work with any data source. A few reasons for that. Customers have existing tools, so it eliminates the requirement to deploy additional tooling. This helps with time to value, general coverage, accuracy of data. Equally, that's what enables the managed service providers to be able to take that sort of service out to market at scale as well. So helps in that sense. And then one other thing is the modularity. Not every customer has the same software footprint, so being able to pick and choose actually what you want is important. because this, you're not buying bloatware, right? So from a commercial aspect, it becomes much more accessible to the wider market. And, a lot of organizations want to get into the space of controlling their software asset management better, and they can do it from a hardware perspective quite well from these discovery solutions or ITSM tools. However, from a SAM side, they need to go out and buy a solution or get a managed service, which can be quite costly. And there's not really been anything in the market which will cater to a specific need. So it's, making it more accessible to the wider market rather than just maybe the medium to enterprise size organizations.
If you're enjoying listening to this episode, please show your support and take this short break to like and subscribe to this series and beyond. One more thing, if you know someone who could benefit from this episode, share the love and share this episode. Thank you.
You mentioned accessibility. Now, with kind of added accessibility, there are occasionally kind of data and security. I mean, how does licenseware address the challenges of data security within their clients?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It comes up quite a lot. So there's the standards, we're hosted in Azure. We've got X, Y, and Z security measures in place, different security certifications that we need to go through to make people feel trustworthy. So there's the standard response from any SaaS sort of company. I think it was also dependent on the product that's within questions. GDPR, as an example, is not relevant to, let's say, a particular vendor analysis like Red Hat. But to Office 365, however, you're starting to see usernames, people's details, etc. So the type of security level will vary based on the product that's within scope. And equally, it depends on the actual customer. So we've had a lot of feedback from our partners and from customers. Say that there was a military organization who needed to understand more about their Oracle database compliance. They had an air-gapped environment, and the only way the service provider could deliver the service was, obviously going through security clearance, driving on site, getting scans, getting given a device, and sitting in a room on, a particular device which is on a closed network, and do the analysis manually, which is a pain for the customer because they've got to pay to get this fee, and paying for the service provider who's also having to deliver this. And I mean, that's probably like quite a niche example, but you get this for a number of industries, right? So if they're not happy with the security measures that we have in terms of the cloud, we have a product called Licenseware Encryptor. It doesn't necessarily encrypt. It does send data encrypted, but it unilaterally obfuscates data on premise. And the unilateral bit's important so you don't lose any relationships between your different data sources. So when you're doing particular analysis, you will get software installation data and hardware installation data from one data source, and then you'll get maybe virtual relationships from another, but you need to keep the names consistent to be able to do the analysis. So what the tool does is obfuscates all of the data fields that need obfuscating, but using the same keys, meaning that the obfuscated outputs match across data sources. So then you can analyze it in the cloud, completely anonymous, to bring it back down on-prem, decrypt it with those keys, and then you've got your results. There's a lot of other things we've got, but yeah, we've got from one extreme to the other, general security measures and certifications, all the way to offline, on-premise, the obfuscation tooling as well.
Well, I mean, one of the big points mentioned before was this way. It's a non-invasive tool, isn't it? So you can literally just plug and play in terms of a data set from the customers. So when you are going through, for example, you're trialing the product or doing a demos, it can be shown just with a data set they give you. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So anyone can register an account and process as much data as they want for free. So all of the guides are available on our help center. So if you've got SCCM or RV tools, or Map Toolkit or Flexera or Snow or ServiceNow, whatever tool you've got, if it's something we already integrate with, all the guides are online. Export the data or establish the API. Drag and drop the data on, click go, it will process and you'll get your results. We process Oracle database at a rate of about 1.2 seconds per database and Microsoft's 50 devices per second. So sometimes pretty much instant. If you've got a massive environment, go make a cup of tea, come back again, and then you'll have your results. the trick is that on the free account, we'll analyze everything, but we'll only show you the first 10 rows. We can't give you all of the crown jewels, but we will give you enough value from the get-go. Anyone can upload their data today and get results.
Sure. But as you mentioned, there's lots of security processes involved that if someone were to pay them, they could, of course, get that value straight away. So you mentioned there, very quick, is that unique in the market for license-ware? Is that the way that license-ware is potentially revolutionizing with the speed and efficiency that it's crunching the data?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, what other solution, if you were to post on LinkedIn today, I have these data sets, I need an ELP done, can someone tell me how long it's going to take? Do you reckon anyone's going to say, give me 30 minutes? I mean, they might do. There might be someone out there who's got a script very specific to that scenario, but if you were to, create variation between which vendor it was or which data source it was, you're going to have to do that manually, which is what we automate that process. I mean, additionally, if you look at the solutions on the market, if you were to buy a SAM tool net new, the procurement process, the scoping process, the deployment process, the setup process, that's not going to happen by the time we can ingest your current data and analyze it and output it as well. So yeah, definitely a unique USP for us.
Okay, brilliant. So speed is in the output, but also in the installation. Yeah, great to know for any of the listeners are considering. So with the industry at the moment, there's a lot of talk about SaaS management and cloud cost optimization, FinOps, in today's ITAM. So how is licenseware evolving to tackle that?
Good question. So we tackle it in a number of ways already. So we do ingest data from hyperscaler environments like Azure and AWS and OCI and apply the licensing rules to calculate licensing requirements in those scenarios. We ingest data from 365 and we can do the SaaS analysis on that. More holistically speaking, we still want to work on the method of working with any data source, and there's plenty of solutions out there that are being used maybe from a CASB perspective, so Cloud Access Security Broker perspective, so controlling which SaaS applications are being used from a security side. You have all of the data to see which applications and URLs are being hit. So the intention for us is to harness, again, the data that already exists in an environment. Let's not deploy something new. You've got these solutions inbuilt within things like Microsoft 365. Let's pull that data in and apply the intelligence on top of that. There's a couple layers to it. There's either getting to the level of, has this person used a subscription or not used a subscription? And then there's a layer deeper of when you look at things like Dynamics 365 and Salesforce, where you've got a user with multiple licenses with, in the case of Dynamics 365, you have a base license with and multiple attached licenses. How much are they using particular licenses that they own, and are there more appropriate levels that they could be utilizing? That's the other part of the puzzle to solve. There's ways of solving it, and that's where we want to take that data you already have, give you a holistic overview of all of the vendors and which isn't being used at a high level perspective, but then provide low level detail again on that Pareto principle. 80% of your spend and cost and risk goes into 20% of those vendors, and taking a deep dive on the big hitting SaaS solutions that you've got in your environment.
Brilliant. And so I've highlighted a challenge that the industry is facing today. And in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge that the industry faces today?
Technology is evolving extremely fast. The problems of containerization, as an example, I don't think people have still grasped. Now, when you bring in artificial intelligence into the mix, I think it's going to become ever more complex. And I think there's always, and how you solve that problem is always going to change. So I don't think I have an answer to that right now. And I don't think that's an obvious problem for me to have mentioned, because that problem's always existed, right? But I think it's just going to become much worse. I will caveat that with, I think there will be more focus on our industry to help solve this problem. Software spend, technology spend is rapidly increasing. So more, the decision makers within organizations are going to put focus into budget and resource into managing this. So I think we'll be able to balance it out as an industry. Secondly, the age-old issue of data coverage. Being able to converge either multiple data sources or ensure that you've got proper coverage of your environment, that's always been a challenge. I think some solutions in the market are finding better ways of ensuring coverage from a discovery perspective and bringing into scope different types of assets as well, because we're not just talking desktop computers and servers here. We're talking edge devices, IoT, etc., which need to be brought into the scope also. And so I think the pace of change, but I think there'll be a change in how much resource we've got allocated to manage those, but equally ensuring that the technology to find and scan and get information regarding assets is always been a problem.
It's fantastic. Obviously, you did highlight something that isn't constantly spoken about in the market. Containerism is something that you are thinking about. How's Licenceware addressing that challenge right now?
So on the point of containerization, we have our own container discovery, and we've got our own Java discovery. We build very niche discovery for where there's gaps in the market. Organizations will need some level of solution that will be in their environment used for all aspects of asset management, but being able to utilize as many data points as possible and converge them to create consistency is the way that we solve that. Rather than having to deploy one agent across everything, let's take what you've already got in these different environments and we'll bring that together to create that picture, understand what the differences are, where you need to improve things, and go from there to create more of a coverage and more of a amalgamation of data.
Brilliant. If we can touch on the stuff that you can talk about right now, I mean, what can we expect from Licenceware?
So we talked about Neo briefly. We started to obviously train the model in terms of on licensing resource. We want to shift the focus more towards our own analysis and contract analysis. I don't think that the other players in the market haven't thought of the same idea. However, I don't think we're going to be doing something completely different in that aspect. But in terms of where we've come from, because our initial go-to-market was managed service providers, we have so much detail, it's probably too much for some people. They want to know more information and digestible information easier. So we think that rather than building more reports, more pie charts, etc., we need to focus more around the ability to prompt a large language model to generate reports, and equally provide prompts which might help people determine more insights from their data as well. Furthermore, we've got our SIM products releasing later on this year. Whilst we've focused mainly on the traditional tier 1 vendors, there obviously is a gap with the tier 2 and tier 3, which we need to address. And there's some interesting ways where we're able to do that at scale, to be able to identify not only all of the licensable software standards stuff, but actually where you should focus on. It's great having a tool which discovers everything and tells you what your software, but what's the wood between the trees, right? I've done my Microsoft, I've done my Oracle. Where do I need to focus? So being able to proactively say, look, you need to take a look at these vendors because of X, Y, and Z, which is happening in the industry, is super, super important. And the rest I can't really talk about just yet. But
lots of exciting stuff. I guess a lot of that, correct me if I'm wrong, has been inspired by the feedback that you have received from the MSPs, from your customers from your partners who are using the tool.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know what you don't know. I think that's really important with end consumers. We live in the industry, right? We know if I was to look through some raw software, I would probably call out some software titles. If I was to have a meeting with someone to be like, look, guys, you've got this in here. Don't know if you're aware, but this licensing rule means this, and this is something you need to be focused on. Oracle Java is a really well-known example. I mean, if you weren't in those circles, and our industry is aware of this, but if you weren't in those circles, you'd have no idea how important that is. And that's just one example. So being able to find that's really important. Equally for MSPs to be able to say, I've done my big ticket services. What's my next one which I can look to help this customer with, just to make their lives easier as well? And equally, in terms of the usability of the product, simple's better. We want it to be as easy as possible to use. I mean, if you haven't seen the UI is from, this century. It's not one of those really old products that was built back in the day. And we've got, new technologies which makes understanding data much easier. Tables are great. We love tables. I love Excel. But new and better ways of being able to filter that data and get value from it beyond what we've done is probably the next part. I love Excel, but we want to stop people downloading stuff to Excel from licenseware. We want them to stay within the platform because there'll be more feature-rich functionality within it.
Yeah. Okay, no, makes sense. And I guess those additional services and features that, because the company's quite agile in terms of the way it's developed its product, you can make those changes relatively easy, of course, with the right knowledge to be able to program it.
Yeah. So one of the things we did from a back end perspective was try to make sure that things weren't interconnected. That's caused a lot of problems as well. That's caused us a lot of pain. But in terms of the agility of being able to redevelop specific products has been made much easier. And because we also have distinct data models for each application, we can provide analysis within context of a particular product. So the way that you would want to structure your data for Oracle database is different from the way you would structure it from Microsoft. When you then start to bring all of that data together, however, and provide conjoined analysis on top, then becomes a bit more complex. So I think from a back end, we've got some work to do to improve there as well, which is obviously something that we'll fix internally. But the intention was always to be able to be as rapid as possible and remove as many technical barriers for us to make changes and bring new products to market.
Now, something that strikes me is you seem very aware of the problems and obviously the solutions to sort them out, which is fantastic. Leads on to my next question in terms of, what have you learned from your journey?
There's a few going through my head, and I think I remember the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And that's really important. And I used to know that from a sales perspective. And actually, it's really applicable to customer success. It's applicable to customer onboarding. It's applicable to product development, and making sure that that's really ingrained throughout a customer's life cycle from beginning to end. Like generating leads and conversations and demos is easy, but equally being able to process the data and get the outputs is easy. And I think what we learned from an MSP perspective, they understood it because that was our initial go-to-market. But then when you got to the end user side, there was a sharp shift in mentality in terms of what they expected from the product then. And I think it's not necessarily something I would change, but it was one important thing that I'd learned is that you always need to have that approach. Don't think once you've signed the contract that it's done. No, you need to make sure that they really understand, because with updating the product so much as well, is keeping them up to date from a marketing perspective, making sure that you're hot on top of them with everything that's happening, any of the challenges that they've got coming up as well. As a growing organization who is developing products, ensuring we know what those needs are is the most important part to our development as an organization. Definitely the most important.
Brilliant. So what have you got in place to make sure that your clients and customers are being updated upon these changes and aware of these changes in the app?
Yeah, lots of methods. So you've got your traditional marketing methods. We try and stay really relevant on LinkedIn, maybe less so recently, but we try and do it from a social perspective as well. In-app information, so you can clearly see when new functionality comes into the platform, and then standard customer success and staying in communications with the customer to make sure they're getting value from the product. We do, and we're shifting the platform, but we have a dedicated portal for feature submissions where it's not a ticketing portal. All of the features are public and you can upvote, downvote on them, etc. So that was really quite pivotal in terms of getting feedback on not just bugs, but equally features that people would want, and opening that to the community. In terms of the way we handle product development, we do weekly release cycles and weekly roadmap calls. The roadmap calls actually after this call, straight after. And what we all do is weigh up all of the feedback that we've received, and we need to understand the impact to that particular customer, the impact to all of our customers, whether it's a good thing or is it a bad thing, the complexity of delivering, etc. And then we do that on a weekly rinse and repeat. Not only does that improve the products that we have, but it ensures that our roadmap is going in the right direction based on what the market's wanting.
Brilliant. It's something that really struck me there is that you opened it up to the community. So even those who are, I presume, are not consuming the product were also able to get involved in the development of seeing, or rather helping you to develop what they needed to potentially be a consumer of the product. Is that correct in making that assumption?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, one of the reasons we built the product, Greg, was one of the objections that we often had, and we always understood this: bad data in equals bad data out. So how do we solve the bad data in problem? And we could solve that by making it very, very clear in terms of how the data should be exported from particular tools. However, we'd always have situations where the partner would say to the customer, can you please export RV tools in this fashion? They would try and upload it, and normally RV tools has got 20 odd tabs on it, and they would try and process an RV tool export which has 2 tabs. And it's like, well, you fiddled with the data. The partner would say, well, arguably, if you did all of this, you could get it to work. And we developed templates, so you could copy and paste the data into templates to then solve that problem. But it still was a challenge, and it was a pain for our customers and our prospects to adopting our technology. So we thought, how can we solve this unilaterally? And we developed the product Greg, which allows you to effectively map and merge multiple data sets together, compare the differences, compare the consistencies. And it's not just applicable for IT asset management. You could upload any Excel, right? We've had people use it to map out like IoT sensors in buildings. We've had some people use it to compare they were what's the word I'm thinking of, a retail firm who were comparing different prices for different products from different suppliers. So it can be used for lots of different reasons, but the main reason we built it was to help people adopt the technology. But actually, the number of use cases that it's got were unforeseen for us from the initial sort of scoping of it. So yeah, identifying that was a biggest challenge. Being data agnostic was our biggest challenge. That's definitely solved that. We're now embedding that functionality within each individual product. So you can do it with a particular context for a particular vendor. And then I think once we've ticked that box, APIs is definitely the way to go. Once we did the API connection with Landsweeper and we started understanding their customer requirements, that time to value is so much faster, and that onboarding process is so much easier. That's definitely where we can allow people to upload any data source now via static. We need to start enabling API connections for more.
At the final segment of the Off Menu podcast, where we are looking at takeaways to provide the listeners in the ITAM community. Do you have a takeaway, a hack, a trick, or a success story using your specific product that maybe is kind of a go-to to instantly achieve?
I have a few. Yeah, so RV tools. I mean, most people in the industry should know RV tools, but I don't think enough people use it in multiple contexts. Broadcom with VMware at the moment is causing a lot of ruffled feathers. RV tools will get you all of your VMware environment information. They'll get you your license keys. They'll get your license key allocations. It will tell you what those license keys are. The last bits of information you need to do is just tally, which business entity owns those keys and in which regions, and you can map it out from there. So RV tools is a really great place to start when it comes to VMware analysis. I've got some more. OJDM Collector. This is a plug because we built the tool, but it's open source. It's free to use. A lot of people are having problems with Oracle Java. A lot of tools will tell you you've got Java installed on a machine, but it won't tell you what's running the Java. So we built an open source tool which will tell you the process path and the dependency of the JDK and JRE. We're not in the business of discovery. So we've just, thrown it out there just to help everyone out. Of course, it integrates with our solution, but it'll give you all the information you need to figure out what's running your Oracle Java. I mentioned Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps earlier. If you're interested in doing SaaS management and you're using M365, you probably sat on the technology and paying for a license. So look at that functionality. And then lastly, for the MSPs out there, Landsweeper have an MSP pay-as-you-go license, which is really cool. It's not something I've kind of seen in the industry before. I think it's a really good alternative since the death of Map Toolkit.
Okay, brilliant. I mean, say you're ordering a lot of takeaways then, and a lot was given out. Fantastic. Well, I would love for you to send me the links, and of course I'll include the links to these tools within the body of the podcast. And finally, what's your favorite takeaway meal? What do you enjoy on a Friday, Saturday, or a lazy weekday?
It depends where I live. I currently live just south of Oxford in the middle of nowhere, so my choices are limited. So if I was to be living here, it would be an Indian takeaway. I normally go for more spicy curry, plenty of sides, rice. You need your naan bread, etc. So go all out with that. If I was to be living somewhere with more choice, it would have to be a Thai curry. It would have to be a Thai takeaway. I love a Thai curry. Love a Thai curry.
Nice. Yeah, so I mean, obviously like it spicy then, because Thai curries are synonymous with being quite spicy.
Yeah. Oh, I have a funny story about me eating a fowl curry on holiday, but I'll tell you that privately, Sean.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Brilliant. Hey, well, thanks so much, Chris. Really, really appreciate your time and the takeaways you've given as well. Fantastic. Really looking forward to sharing that with the listeners. And yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Well, we reached the end, and I really hope you enjoyed that. And if you want any further information about our guests, then their LinkedIn profile and contact information can be found in the episode notes. I do have one more section, which is a request for your involvement. I created this following multiple members of our community suggesting I should do this. And so this is a community-driven platform that is curated to help you. So if you know of any alternative solutions within our industry or related to the ITAM industry, then I want to hear from you. Help me to interview those that you want to learn about. And finally, if there is any feedback, it's welcomed. I want you to help me to improve this podcast. The better this gets, the better the information you'll receive. So help me to ask the questions that are relevant to you so you get the right answers. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And again, please share with your colleagues and industry peers if you feel it's relevant. Thank you.